Welcome to Fascinating Flash. Okay, let's jump right in. Today we're doing a deep dive into Norse mythology, looking really closely at one figure who, well, based on the texts and sagas we've looked through, seems absolutely central, maybe the most popular god, Thor.
Exactly. And these sources, they paint a picture of Thor that's much richer, much more complex than just, the god of thunder people might think of.
Right. So our goal here is to really understand Thor as these sources show him. Who was he? What were his powers actually like? The key myths, for sure, but also, and this is interesting, his connection to ordinary people.
Yeah, the texts consistently portray him as this crucial protector, not just for humanity, for Midgard, but for the gods in Asgard, too.
And what really stands out from these accounts is how much he seemed to resonate with, well, everyday folks, farmers, laborers. The sources really emphasize his veneration among them.
Definitely. So maybe let's start with his basic identity, his family, and the kind of power we're talking about.
Okay, so the texts are clear. Son of Odin, the Allfather. That's quite the pedigree. And they constantly hammer home his physical strength. Immense, almost hard to wrap your head around.
Truly tremendous, yeah. And his home in Asgard, this palace called Bilskirnir. The sources describe it as, get this, the largest palace there, 540 rooms.
540 rooms.
540, wow. I mean, just imagine the size of that place.
It's vast. But here's the detail that really tells you something about his connection to common people. The sources specifically say those rooms, they were meant to house the souls of servants and working people after they died.
Whoa, hold on. Not just warriors or kings, servants.
Exactly. It suggests a god who, looked out for the everyday person, even in the afterlife. It really shifts the perspective.
It absolutely does. Okay, so beyond just raw strength, what about his, tools, his equipment?
Well, yeah, his gear is iconic, isn't it? The hammer, Mjolnir, it's a legend in itself. Forged by dwarves, according to the myths.
Right, the dwarves, master craftsmen. And it had these incredible properties. It always returned to his hand when he threw it. And often, the texts mention it being red hot. Al rojo vivo, as one source puts it.
Red hot. Okay, that's vivid. How did he even hold it then?
Good question. That's where his special iron gloves came in the iron grippers, or yarn griper. The myths say he absolutely needed these to handle Mjolnir's heat.
So specialized gear just to wield his main weapon. Makes sense.
Precisely. And then there's the belt, Meginghord. This magical belt, the sagas tell us, could actually double his already immense strength.
Double it. Wow. So it's not just innate power. It's innate power plus these incredible, divinely crafted artifacts.
Exactly. It shows this Norse idea that even gods relied on powerful objects, on magic and craftsmanship. It wasn't just about punching things really hard.
That's a great point. What about how he got around? He didn't just walk everywhere, did he?
No. He had his chariot, pulled by two billy goats, Tangrisnir and Tangj Rouster.
Goats. I love that detail. It seems almost humble in a way.
Maybe. But here's a really striking, maybe slightly bizarre detail from the sagas about those goats. If Thor was hungry or needed food,
Yeah.
he could cook and eat them.
Wait, what? Eat his own goats? His
Yeah.
transportation.
Yep. But, and this is crucial, he could use Mjolnir's power to bring them back to life the next day. Full resurrection.
Okay, that's cute.
But there was a rule. No bones could be broken. Every single bone had to be intact for the resurrection to work perfectly.
Okay. And isn't there a story connected to that? With a human boy?
Absolutely. Thjálfi. He and his sister were traveling with Thor, shared a meal of the goats. Thjálfi, wanting the marrow, cracked one of the leg bones.
Oh, please.
Exactly. So the next morning, Thor resurrects the goats, but one is lame. It can't pull the chariot properly, and because Thjálfi broke that rule,
Consequences.
direct consequences, he and his sister had to become Thor's servants from then on. It's a clear example in the myths. Actions matter, rules matter, even when dealing with gods.
That really paints a picture. Okay, let's talk about some of his big adventures. The myths are full of them. Maybe the most famous is when Mjolnir gets stolen.
Oh, definitely. The theft of the hammer, that's the one with the giant thrym. He nabs Mjolnir, and his ransom demand is, wow, audacious. He wants the goddess Freya as his wife.
A giant demanding a goddess. Bold move.
And isn't this where Loki steps in? Always the trickster.
Always cunning, yeah. Loki comes up with the plan. He convinces Thor, who must have been desperate to disguise himself as Freya.
Thor, dressed as Freya, oh, you can just picture it.
Right. They go to the Giant's Hall for this fake wedding feast. The plan is to grab the hammer when it's brought out to supposedly bless the bride.
And the descriptions of that feast. Thor in his disguise, just scarfing down food. An entire ox, 8 salmon. The sources really play up the humor.
Can you imagine The giant Thrym is sitting there looking at his bride, demolishing mountains of food and barrels of mead, and he starts thinking, something's not quite right here.
Understandably. He apparently questions her surprisingly large appetite. He does. But Loki, disguised as Freya's handmaiden, smooths things over with some quick thinking.
So, beyond the sheer comedy, what does this story really tell us about Thor, according to these texts?
Well, it highlights that even with all his strength, Thor wasn't invincible or all-knowing. He sometimes really needed the wit, the cunning of someone like Loki. He relied on others.
And it shows him using a tactic that's, let's say, unconventional for a mighty warrior god, dressing as a woman.
Exactly. Which maybe tells us something about how the Norse saw their gods, not as these rigid, perfect beings. They had flaws, they faced awkward situations, they sometimes had to do embarrassing or unexpected things to achieve their goals, to restore order. It adds a layer of, well, humanity almost.
That makes sense. Okay, another huge one, his fishing trip. The one where he tries to catch the Midgard serpent, Jörmungandr.
Oh, yeah, that's epic. He goes out in a boat with the giant Hymir, uses a massive ox head for bait.
And the text described this incredible moment when Jörmungandr takes the bait. The sheer tension, Thor pulling with literally all his might.
Planting his feet so hard they break right through the bottom of the boat. Standing on the seabed, fighting this colossal serpent.
What an image. It feels like this primal struggle, right? Thor, the protector of Midgard, of order, versus this ultimate symbol of chaos coiled around the world.
It's a powerful depiction of that constant battle, but he doesn't actually land the serpent then, does he?
No, that's the frustrating part. According to the sources, the giant Hymir gets completely terrified, so scared.
Yeah.
He cuts the fishing line, Jörmungandr sinks back into the depths.
Ah, so close. The battle left unfinished.
Until Ragnarok, anyway.
Yeah.
The end of the world battle, the sources say they have their final showdown there.
They do, and in that final cataclysmic fight, Thor does succeed. He finally kills Jörmungandr.
Victory at last. But it comes at a cost.
A terrible cost. As Jörmungandr dies, it spews its venom all over Thor.
And the poison is just too potent. The sagas grimly state he manages to walk only 9 steps away from the serpent's corpse. And then he falls dead.
A tragic end. Heroic, certainly. Fulfilling his role as protector to the very last, but ultimately fatal.
Absolutely. So when you pull all these threads together from the sources, Thor emerges as, well, yes, the god of thunder, the embodiment of physical power, but his core function, his essence, seems to be protection.
Without a doubt. And Mjolnir itself reinforces that. It wasn't just a weapon for smashing giants. Think about those archaeological finds, all those small Mjolnir amulets people wore.
Yeah, tiny pendants found everywhere. People wore them every day.
Exactly. And the accounts we have of Mjolnir being used in ceremonies, consecrating marriages, blessing funerals, it shows it was also this deeply sacred symbol, a symbol of blessing, of legitimacy, and, again, protection in daily life.
He really represented, it seems, the courage needed to face down chaos, the active defense of the community of order, and always that strong link back to ordinary people.
Which, interestingly, provides a bit of a contrast with his father, Odin, as he's depicted in the same sources.
How so?
Well, Odin is often associated more with, say, kingship, with strategy, cider magic, a kind of darker, more complex, enigmatic wisdom.
Right. More cerebral, perhaps. Maybe linked more closely to the warrior elite, the aristocracy. Always seeking knowledge, sometimes at any price.
Less.
Directly connected to the common farmer.
It seems that way. Thor is more straightforward, more about direct action and protection of the here and now for everyone.
Which really leads us to a final thought, something these sources make you ponder. If Thor is this figure of direct physical protection, brute force maybe, but used responsibly and so close to the people, how does that truly stack up against Odin, the Allfather, tied to sovereignty, hidden knowledge, the warrior class?
Yeah, are they perhaps presented as, like, two essential sides of the same coin, representing different but equally vital aspects of what the Norse valued in their leaders, their society, their very cosmos?
Something for you to think about, drawing on what these ancient voices have told us in this deep dive.